Go.
Imaginary realms of animated movies. Sometimes whimsical, sometimes magical, and sometimes deeply moving. They have undergone a remarkable evolution from hand-drawn illustrations to ultra-realistic imagery, a transformation fueled by the advances in computer graphics and the craft of filmmaking. Today, we will learn what goes into creating this magical world of animated movies. This is Career Calling, and I'm your host, Pratibha Pandit. My guest, Mariana Galindo, has been crafting these worlds for nearly 2 decades at Pixar Animation Studios and DreamWorks. Modeling clothes for characters in iconic movies such as Toy Story, Incredibles, Coco, and Turning Red, among many others. She will share with us the intricate process of animated movie making, with a focus on the discipline of cloth simulation. She will also share how to build a career in this field that blends art, science, and technology. Hey, Mariana, welcome to Career Calling.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As audience, when we watch these beautiful animation movies, we are so into those magical worlds that we almost forget that somebody needs to create those piece by piece and, part by part. Maybe because of that, when I first learned about that, there is a field of expertise for creating clothing for these animation characters, I was so surprised. So tell us, what does it mean, simulating tailoring?
So there's a couple steps in it. There's our development step, and if you think of the characters as, hand puppets in the computer, we need to put just articles of clothing on them. So the part of the discipline is called modeling, and you can sculpt out different shapes, or you can even use 2D tailoring techniques and lay out panels that'll fit around a character. And in order to make it move, there are things called cloth simulators. So essentially, if someone is trying to animate a character, they have a skeleton in there that they can say, okay, open the mouth, close it, make them smile or something. But for a simulator, this is a computer-driven calculation. And there are incredible developers who create cloth solvers that are set up like little springs across a model that you make. And you can help define how much it's going to bend, how much it stretches, how much it shears. And so there's one piece of making the costume for a character, and that's putting all the detailing and stuff inside. And then the other part of it is trying to make it move and make it feel and wrinkle and like a cotton or a denim or a leather, just these different fabric materials.
So these models are physical models, like the physical objects on which you are first trying to put the clothes on before it gets simulated.
Well, they're in the computer, but yes, they're physical, 3D models that we're creating. And then we have, a spring type mesh that goes underneath it to make it move.
And how similar it is to designing and sewing clothes to real people.
It's funny. When you're actually creating the garments, you're working a little backwards. When you're actually creating physical garments in real life, you choose your fabric and then you find your design of what you want it to look like. And this can sometimes be backwards, where we'll decide what we want it to look like, and then we'll try to make it feel like the fabric that we want it to be. But we do a lot of exploration in real world materials. And so we'll build things, and for reference, we'll look, especially when we're early in film production, we are just awkwardly staring at people and their clothing and saying oh, how's this made? You're paying attention to where things are stitched together, what the seam lines are. And even as you're trying to study that, you're thinking of the style of your show, because not everything is going to look like real world cloth. Sometimes you want something more specific and to fit into the world that you're working in. Yeah, a little more magical. Especially in animation, you always have these really stylized head shapes and body shapes, and everything is pushed. And so you want the clothing and costuming too to fit into that style.
Cloth simulation is one of the complex problems of computer graphics that requires a combination of artistry, knowledge of physics, and mathematics to make those animated clothes feel both whimsical yet real. The entire process of animation movie making is a perfect combination of artistry, science, and technology. As a group of artists, storytellers, technologists build a movie layer by layer.
Well, there's definitely hundreds of people who work on films. And especially in animation, it's different from film in the sense that you have nothing. You start with nothing. So everything has to be created. The world, the environment that the characters are in, the characters themselves. Like nothing really comes for free. So I think every film has, or every company has their own pipeline. And there are so many different disciplines that go into it. So, even from the story development side, you have story artists, script writers, and editors. And before we even build anything in 3D, they're trying to figure out and solidify the journey of the characters. And then the editors are always taking the visuals and like putting it into movie form and making the clips and combining with voices and audio. After that, we are making the world and the characters, but we need to understand what that's going to look like. So there tends to be an art and design team, and they're figuring out the style of the film and kind of helping us get a visual target. And they're always incredible collaborators because they're working with all of our experts in our area, and we're kind of get to play back and forth and see how to push what it is that they're visually trying to hit. Um, and then when it comes to the model creation, I'll start with just the environments and say there's modelers who are kind of like sculptors. They create these like 3D shapes. There are shaders who will paint on these sculptures to make them look like the right materials. There's set dressers, and those are people who will, like, if you think about a room, you want to feel like that room is lived in. That's part of a real space, and so they place everything and put all those different pieces like a dollhouse and trying to get them set up. And then on the other side, you have your character people. And those are similar. You have modelers who sculpt the characters and shaders who paint. But in addition to that, there's people who build the skeleton structure underneath. They're called riggers. And they give the tools of like, okay, move this finger, move this, like how is their face going to move around? How's the body going to move around? They give all the controls for that. And then groomers who do all the hair designs and setup. Yeah. And so that's just in that first creation process. Then you have a full pipeline of production where, people are setting up cameras. There are animators who are focused on the performance of all the characters. There's effects who will do, like they'll do a mix of, depending on a project, the mix of environment or character-based simulations, but like fire, water, that kind of thing. My discipline that, takes what's made in the costuming and costuming is part of the character process too. But simulation will take things like, it's either simulation or character effects. They'll take things like the hair and the clothing and make them move with the performance of the character.
Of all the rest of the animation is short is when you layer in the costume part of it.
Yeah, we kind of work in layers. And so as people are working and putting things on, we get to layer on top and layer on top and layer on top.
The interesting part of this field is there is a whole artistic side of things. A lot of these you mentioned, sculptors and the painters, and there is a technology side of it. When somebody wants to get into this field, is there one aspect that plays a bigger role than the other? Like, is it that artistic people are going to do well in this field versus the technology? Is there anything like that? What is your opinion on that?
Of all the people I've met and worked with, they have come from so many different backgrounds, whether it's artistic, maybe it's technical. Sometimes it's something totally different. and they are passionate about what they do. And I think overall, there's just a level of learning and problem solving that I think applies to both artistic and technical. So definitely a cross section in there. And because it's, everyone's working as a team to
Mhm.
make this one product. So I think it's a mix of both. And it's okay if you're more technical. It's okay if you're more artistic. You can find something for you to be a part of if you want to be a part of it.
Mhm. Mhm. You yourself, going back to your education background, you did your bachelor's in fine art and information technology.
Mhm.
What is the starting point for today if somebody is very interested in animation field, they want to get into it? Education wise, what would you advise? What are some of the options they have?
So there are animation specific schools, but I think it really depends where your interests lie. And some of them, you'll hear some that produce a lot of story artists and design artists or 2D animation, and
Mhm.
others that will help shape more lighters or technical
Mhm.
artists. What I would recommend, if there's a certain genre that you're interested in, a certain area or discipline that interests you, just understanding where the parallels are, and, the credits are on every film. Look up certain people and see where they went to
Okay.
school. And the schooling is one aspect of it. Schooling is whatever you put into it, wherever
Mhm.
you end up going. But a lot of it is your portfolio when you're applying to jobs and to visually show what you can do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When you're early on, say in college, how do you build that portfolio? Like, is it through internships or the personal projects? How do one build that portfolio?
Yeah, I think projects, in addition to, like, if you're not building your portfolio through your school program, I definitely recommend working on your own projects on the side as well. A lot of newer folks at the time, they'll go through internships. And I went through internships myself before getting in, showing your potential and saying, yes, I'm willing to learn. I can, pick things up and just kind of build that tenacity to go after it.
Tell us about your journey. Like, were you always interested in getting into animation, or you kind of slowly went in this direction?
I always had animation as a goal since around junior high. So I think I saw there was a TV show during like the first Silicon Valley bubble, and that was called Tech Now. It was local to the Bay Area, and they just went behind the scenes on different tech companies. And at the time, Pixar was one of those like weird tech companies doing, like animation in 3D. What's that? And I seeing them behind the scenes, they were like riding scooters, just a very creative and casual environment. And that's where I was like, oh, that's a job. Like you can do something like that. And I always had it in the back of my mind, like, yeah, I want to do that. That seems incredible. But along the journey, I never knew if I was going to get there. But I kind of just continued with the whatever artistic interests I had, but then kind of just had that in the back of my mind as I was going. Yeah.
After your undergrad, you continued to do internships, like in the same field. How did you finally realize your dream?
So, yeah, in college, I started in the engineering program, but didn't feel like I was taking as many art classes as I wanted to, or
Mhm.
I hoped I would be taking. And so I kind of switched my major and to fine art. That was the only arts program that they had. Being in the art program, I was doing sculpture. I was taking any digital art classes that they had. It kind of helped me have this little side hustle of graphic design. And I worked at the Career Center at my college doing graphic design and promotions for them. It was in that space that they first told me about an internship. Oh, this company is having an internship. Pacific Data Images was a part of DreamWorks. And so PDI DreamWorks, they were located in Redwood City, close to my school. So I just started applying. They had different types of internship options. I interviewed once, totally bombed my interview. I had a cold. I was nervous. It all got the best of me. And they're like, no, not this time. 6 months later, they provided another internship opportunity. I tried again and I was able to land one in their training department, which was such a blessing that I didn't realize because, I didn't have the full understanding of animation itself.
Mhm.
So it was a way for me to connect with artists all over the studio. And as we were setting up classes, and I would be learning what they were learning, it was just a continued education opportunity and proving myself in that space. I was able to get invited back for a second internship. I was like, "Ooh, that one looks interesting." Yeah. And so I went into that one. And then one thing just kept leading to another and until I could get um, a spot.
So, over the years in the field of animation, the production companies or the companies that make animation movies have gotten so much consolidated, and there are very few, at least, that we can see. If somebody was interested, what are the opportunities that exist?
For new students coming in, yeah, there's always a hunger for new talent, new voices, new perspectives. And so the internship programs are very much alive and well in every company, I would think. It's not just animation itself. A lot of these disciplines work across a wider industry, whether or not you're looking at video games or VR or visual effects and animation. Like I would suggest, just putting yourself out there to anything, whatever kind of builds your reputability and skills. One thing I would also say, trying to get a job is not just about how good you are at what you do. It's how well you work with people and how consistent you are in your work.
Mhm.
Because, anyone can spend like 30 hours on a single thing and make it look great. But you are in a film environment or a game environment, whenever you're all kind of working as a team to make this product, you're trying to hit a deadline. You're
Uh-huh.
collaborating with other people and like going back and forth with perspectives. And so, you know, whether or not you're thinking about this from an internship perspective or a full-time job, that's what you're trying to convince people of. Like, hey, I'm easy to work with. I know what I need in order to hit a deadline, and I will put my best out there.
Now, are there any specific forums for people who are like, if somebody wants to learn, like, I know that I have inclination towards this, but I know nothing about how the movies are made or, nothing about what are the different opportunities that exist. Are there any, other than LinkedIn, is there any place where there are opportunities to learn or read up or watch or something like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a full like a thriving online forum or just community that you can dig into. When I was getting into the industry, there were like magazines and like DVDs you would watch, but these days, know, YouTube has so much content
Hmm.
to pick up animation and it's not necessarily even about the tools that you're learning in. If you want to become an animator, the tool isn't what makes you animate. Your skill set of understanding motion and physicality means that you can animate in whatever tool. You just need to
Hmm.
learn that tool. And
Hmm.
and so there are like blogs and forums. There's different just like graphic societies that you can go to. SIGGRAPH is another huge like graphics conference where um all the different industries like graphics types industries, like I said, the gaming, the VR, the animation, visual effects, they all come there and like talk about their techniques or challenges that they worked through. I was mentoring some other artists and they're like, oh, I just got uh, you know, a model I made got an award through this online contest. And I was like, oh, cool. There's online challenges where you can, within a certain time frame, create something
Hmm.
and show it off. And that's almost how you can display your work outside of
Hmm.
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is its own, for our space, that's like a resume tool, but we're always flipping to like, well, here are my visual spaces as well. You kind of link anything that kind of demonstrates portfolios.
Finally, what advice would you give for somebody who wants to start off? Like you talked about building a portfolio, trying to get into internships. Anything else? Final advice for anybody just in
Mm.
this field?
If you were, let's say, in middle school or high school at this point, I would say keep your mind open because I didn't know the job I had even existed. And I don't think it did when I was in middle school.
Uh-huh.
And the craft is always evolving and changing. And
Hmm.
so, have your eye on the prize and do your drawing, do like write stories, just whatever you can, just start creating and how you enjoy creating and keep building that skill set. But at the same time, when it's time for you to get a job, you don't know what the landscape of jobs is going to look like at that point. There might
Mhm.
be totally new things that are invented at that point, and which is exciting. And so, yeah, just keep finding ways to build your craft and keep your eyes open when you get there.
Makes sense. Thank you so much, Mariana. This is very informative and it's really fascinating. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
If you're a student or someone interested in animation, a great place to start is Pixar in a Box, a collaboration between Pixar Animation Studios and Khan Academy that gives in-depth behind-the-scenes look at how Pixar artists do their job. This free online course teaches all aspects of animated movie pipeline while also teaching the science and mathematics principles behind them. Some other resources include siggraph.org, SIGGRAPH.org, a nonprofit organization serving the evolution of computer graphics and interactive techniques, and their YouTube channel ACM SIGGRaph. DigiPro, a digital production symposium that brings together the world's premium creators of digital visual effects, animation, and interactive experiences. For more resources, check the description box of the YouTube video. This is Career Calling, and I'm your host, Pratibha Pandit. Thank you for tuning in.